My daughter Emma was in a 15-hour spinal surgery, and not one person from my family called, texted, or showed up. 3 days later, my father asked for $7,000 for my brother's engagement party. I sent him 1 cent with a note, then cut off every account I owned. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The smell of a hospital is something you can never forget. It's a sterile chemical sharpness that coats the back of your throat and clings to your clothes. For 15 hours, that smell was my entire world. I sat in a hard beige-colored plastic chair in the surgical waiting room of pediatric orthopedics. My hands clenched so tightly my knuckles were white. My daughter, my brave 16-year-old Emma, was having a spinal fusion. Her scoliosis, which we had fought with braces and therapy for years, had become too aggressive. The curve in her spine was threatening to crush her lung. The surgery was not optional, and it was dangerous. 15 hours. I had texted my family, my mother Carol, my father Gerald, and my younger brother Nathan in our family group chat the night before. Emma's surgery is tomorrow at 6 o'clock a.m. It's a long one, 15 hours. Please keep her in your thoughts. The replies were predictable. My mother, oh dear, sending prayers, folded hands, my father will do. Let us know how it goes. My brother Nathan, a thumbs-up liked reaction to the message. Nothing else. I arrived at the hospital at 4:30 a.m. holding Emma's hand as they wheeled her gurney through the double doors. Her eyes, wide with a fear she was trying to hide for my sake, met mine. I love you, Mom. See you in a bit. I love you more, sweetie, I whispered, my voice cracking. I'll be right here when you wake up. Right here. The doors swung shut, and the surgery-in-progress light clicked on. I found my beige chair and I waited. At 8 o'clock a.m., the caffeine from my 4 o'clock a.m. coffee had long since worn off, replaced by a jittery, acidic dread. I checked my phone. Nothing. At 12 o'clock p.m., my stomach was a tight knot of hunger and nausea. I forced myself to walk to the cafeteria, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. I stared at my phone, willing it to light up. A text from my mom asking for an update. A call from my dad telling me he was on his way to sit with me. Nothing. I bought a stale muffin I couldn't eat and returned to my post. At 4 o'clock p.m., the sun was beginning to angle through the high windows, casting long, lonely shadows across the floor. My back ached. My eyes burned from staring at the same blurry landscape painting on the wall. I had texted the group chat once at 1 o'clock p.m. Doctor just gave a midday update. Things are complicated, but she's stable. Still several hours to go. No replies, not even a like from Nathan this time. At 7:30 p.m., a surgeon in blue scrubs, his mask hanging around his neck and his face etched with exhaustion, walked into the waiting room. He looked at me, the lone occupant, and said, "Catherine for Emma." I shot to my feet, my heart seizing. "Yes, is she okay?" "She's okay," he said, and the breath I hadn't realized I was holding rushed out of me in a sob. It was a very complex procedure, 15 hours on the dot. Her curve was more severe than the imaging showed, but she's a strong kid. She's in recovery. You can see her in about an hour. I collapsed back into the chair, tears streaming down my face. Tears of relief, of sheer, gut-wrenching exhaustion. I fumbled for my phone to update my family, my hands shaking. I typed, "She's out. 15 hours. It was hard, but she's in recovery. She's okay. Thank God." I sent it. And then I just sat there waiting for my phone to buzz, for my mom to call, crying with relief for my dad to say, "We'll be by tomorrow to see her." Nothing. I waited. I scrolled through their social media. My mother had posted a picture of a rose from her garden 3 hours ago. My brother Nathan had posted a selfie with his new fiancée Vanessa at a fancy rooftop bar downtown. The caption read, "Celebrating our future, big things coming, clinking glasses, blessed power couple." It was 7:30 p.m. They were in the same city, less than 20 miles away, sipping cocktails, while my daughter was having her spine rebuilt. I put my phone away. The waiting room, which had felt like a sterile purgatory, now felt like a tomb. The silence from my family was louder than any alarm. It was a cold, hard, definitive statement of my value, of Emma's value. We were an afterthought, an inconvenience. When the nurse finally called my name to go back, I walked down the hall alone. I scrubbed my hands, put on the visitor's gown, and pushed open the door to Emma's bay. She was so pale, so small in the tangle of tubes and monitors, her face swollen. Her first groggy words were, "Mom, you're here." "I'm here, baby," I whispered, taking her hand. "I'm right here. I'm never leaving." And as I sat by her bed, listening to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor, I felt something inside me shift. The part that had always made excuses for them. Mom's just busy. Dad's not good with hospitals. Nathan's just young. It went quiet. It was replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. The betrayal was worse than the fear had been. The next 3 days were a blur of beeping machines, pain management schedules, and the small, agonizing victories of Emma's recovery. Her first sip of water. The first time the nurses helped her sit up. Her face pale with agony. Through it all, I was her rock, her nurse, her cheerleader, and her handholder. I slept in the lumpy vinyl recliner by her bed, subsisting on vending machine crackers and lukewarm coffee. My phone remained a silent testament to my family's indifference. The group chat message I had sent announcing Emma was out of surgery stared back at me, marked read by Carol, Gerald, and Nathan. No one had responded. Not a text, not a call, not one. It was Wednesday afternoon. Emma was finally asleep, her breathing deep and even for the first time. I was rubbing the circulation back into my legs when my phone buzzed on the bedside table. My heart did a stupid, hopeful leap. "Mom," I grabbed it. The screen lit up with a text message from Dad Gerald. Subject, family help. My brow furrowed, family help. I opened it. "Hi, Catherine, hope you're well. Listen, your mother and I have been talking to Nathan. He and Vanessa have decided on a destination for their engagement party. They found a perfect all-inclusive package in Bali, but the deposit is due by Friday. It's a wonderful opportunity for them to network with Vanessa's clients. We need to pull together as a family. Your mother and I are covering the flights, but we need you to pitch in for the event deposit. It's $7,000. Just send it to Nathan's account. Thanks. I read the message once, twice, a third time. Hope you're well. Pitch in. $7,000. I looked from the glowing screen to my daughter asleep in her hospital bed. My daughter, who had just endured 15 hours of metal rods and screws being fused to her spine. My daughter, whose grandparents and uncle couldn't be bothered to send a single text message. They hadn't asked about her. They hadn't asked me if I was okay. They had just waited what they must have felt was a polite amount of time before sending the bill for the golden child's next adventure. A sound bubbled up in my chest. It was a laugh, a cold, dry, humorless sound that startled me. My profession, my entire life was risk analysis. I spent my days identifying vulnerabilities, calculating exposure, and mitigating threats. I was the one who read the fine print. I was the one who managed the portfolios. I was the one who set up my parents' retirement accounts, my brother's phone plan, their streaming services, their online bill pay. And in their breathtaking arrogance, in their blind assumption that I would just sigh and transfer the money like I always did, they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten who held all the passwords. My hand was perfectly steady as I opened my banking app. I found my father's contact. I selected transfer money. I typed in the amount, 1 cent. In the memo line, I wrote, "Put it toward his future." I hit send. A profound, icy calm settled over me. The exhaustion, the grief, the desperate need for their approval, it all evaporated, replaced by a crystalline righteous anger. They had made a critical miscalculation. They had assessed their risk and found none. I picked up my laptop from my bag, plugged it into the wall, and tethered it to my phone's hot spot. The vinyl chair creaked as I settled in. I had a few hours before Emma woke up. It was time to do what I did best. It was time to mitigate the threat. My family always operated on an unspoken agreement. Catherine provides. Nathan receives. It had been this way for as long as I could remember. I was the responsible one, the serious one. Nathan, 11 years my junior, was the charmer, the dreamer. My parents, Carol and Gerald, were products of a generation that saw their son as their legacy and their daughter as their safety net. When I got my first job out of college, my first real paycheck went to helping them with a new water heater. When I got my first promotion, I took over their car payments. When I became a senior analyst, I co-signed on their new condo because their own retirement savings, which I also managed, were laughably thin after my father was encouraged into early retirement at 62. I paid for it all quietly because that's what good daughters did. Nathan, meanwhile, drifted. His 20s were a string of failed startups. There was the artisanal pickle company. I paid for the commercial kitchen lease. There was the drop shipping t-shirt business. I paid for the website and $3,000 in unsold inventory. His latest venture was aspiring influencer. This apparently involved him and his new fiancée, Vanessa, taking glamorous photos at expensive restaurants, all charged to a credit card for which I was the primary account holder. The card was for emergencies only, a term Nathan defined as brunch. Then came Vanessa. I had met her exactly twice. The first time was at a strained Sunday dinner. Vanessa was beautiful, polished, and carried a $4,000 handbag. She spoke in a breezy, affected accent that didn't quite match her origins. She was a boutique consultant, she'd said, a job that seemed to involve aligning brand energies. She had spent the entire dinner assessing my home, her eyes flicking over my furniture, my art, my kitchen appliances. "Oh, Catherine," she'd cooed, "this is so cozy. I just adore these classic suburban homes. Nathan and I are thinking of something more modern, a downtown penthouse, for entertaining." She had then spent 20 minutes talking about their 5-year plan, which heavily featured a destination wedding, a European baby moon, despite not being pregnant, and a lot of discussion about generational wealth. She kept looking at me when she said it. The second time I saw her, she'd cornered me at my parents' 50th anniversary party. "I've been looking at your brother's finances," she'd said, as if she were his accountant and not his girlfriend of 6 months. "He really has so much potential, but he's just not liquid. We were thinking if you could see your way to transferring some of his inheritance over to him now, we could really get a jump on our future." "His inheritance?" I'd replied, stunned. "What inheritance? I'm the one paying the mortgage on this house." Vanessa had just smiled, a tight plastic expression. "Don't be dramatic, Catherine. We all know you're the family's bank. You'll be fine. It's just about unlocking Nathan's potential." That was the woman my brother was celebrating his future with. That was the woman my father was asking me to send $7,000 to for a party in Bali while my daughter was recovering from major surgery. The whole picture snapped into focus there in that dark hospital room. This wasn't just my parents enabling Nathan. This was a hostile takeover. Vanessa had seen my family not as a family, but as a poorly managed asset, and I was the asset. My role was to be the quiet, reliable well of money they could all draw from while they lived their blessed lives. My daughter's crisis, my own emotional trauma, wasn't even a speed bump to them. It was just an inconvenient time for me to be distracted from my primary function. I pulled up the first account, the shared family phone plan. Administrator, Catherine. I looked at Nathan's number. Device payments remaining, 14. Monthly cost, $128. I clicked Manage Line. My rage was no longer hot. It was a cold, efficient engine. I was a risk analyst and I was looking at a portfolio that was 100% toxic. It was time to divest. I started with the phone plan. I couldn't just cancel Nathan's line. That would be too simple. Instead, I initiated a transfer of liability. I ported his number, his precious influencer contact number, to a brand new pay-as-you-go provider. I created a new account for him under his own name using his email address. I paid the $10 activation fee and selected the cheapest plan, $15 a month for 1 GB of data. I put a $10 credit on the account. He would have just enough service to receive a single text message telling him his payment method was declined. He was now his own problem. Next, the bank accounts. I was the primary holder on the family emergency credit card that Nathan and my parents used as their personal slush fund. I logged in. The balance made my stomach clench. $12,748. Recent charges included Chateau Luxe $820, a dinner for Nathan and Vanessa, and Glow Spa $450, a couple's massage, no doubt. I clicked Manage Users, authorized user Gerald, status active, authorized user Carol, status active, authorized user Nathan, status active. My mouse hovered. I took a vindictive pleasure in the next 3 clicks. Remove user. Yes. Remove user. Yes. Remove user. Yes. I then paid the balance in full from my own checking account, a final bitter severance payment, and clicked Close Account. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life," I whispered to the sleeping form of my daughter. I clicked Confirm. Next up, the condo. I couldn't sell it out from under them as my name was on the mortgage, not the deed. But I was the administrator for all the utilities which were linked to my bank account via autopay. I logged into the power company portal. Cancel autopay, done. The gas company. Cancel autopay, done. The city water and trash service. Cancel autopay, done. The premium cable and high-speed internet bundle. Cancel autopay, done. Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify family plan. My name was on all of them. I logged into each one. Netflix, manage accounts, sign out of all devices. Spotify, manage family plan, remove member Carol. Remove member Gerald, remove member Nathan. Amazon, manage Prime, change password. Manage addresses, delete. Manage payment methods, delete. I was the family's digital ghost. I set up their smart TVS, their Wi-Fi, their passwords, and they had never once bothered to learn how any of it worked. They just assumed the lights would stay on, the internet would buffer free, and the Amazon packages would arrive. As a risk analyst, I knew that you never act without full information. My 1-cent transfer was the initial probe. This digital purge was the first strike, but I needed leverage. I needed to understand the enemy. Vanessa. I ran a quick professional-grade background check. It wasn't hard. My firm subscribed to services far more powerful than simple web searches. The results were illuminating. Vanessa was not a boutique consultant. She had worked in PR for 6 months before being let go. She had a string of failed businesses just like Nathan. But unlike Nathan, she had creditors, serious ones. She had over $80,000 in personal debt and 2 outstanding civil judgments against her. She wasn't just a gold digger. She was desperate. The $7,000 for the Bali deposit wasn't for a party. It was to pay off a creditor who was threatening to sue her. She was using my brother and my family as a shield and a bank. She had probably identified me as the primary target within 10 minutes of meeting me. A new text message dinged on my phone. It was from my father, Gerald. "Was that 1 cent a joke, Catherine? I don't have time for this. Nathan needs the money by tomorrow." I stared at the message. "I don't have time for this." My fingers flew across the keyboard. "I'm a little busy, Dad. You know, with Emma's post-operative care, the care none of you have asked about. The 1 cent was a contribution. It's all your son is getting from me, ever again. I suggest you check your credit card and your Wi-Fi and your phone plan." I hit send, and for the first time in days, I smiled. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for the animals to start at their own feet. I didn't have to wait long. The sun wasn't even up. At 6:17 a.m., my phone, which had been silent for days, exploded. It lit up on the bedside table, vibrating violently against the plastic. Incoming call, Mom Carol. I ignored it. It rang, stopped, and immediately rang again. Incoming call, Mom Carol, ignored. Incoming call, Mom Carol, ignored. It went on like this. 17 missed calls. A string of frantic, typo-laden texts began to roll in. Mom, Catherine, answer your phone. Mom, what did you do? Mom, my card was declined at the grocery store. The 24-hour one. I had to leave everything at the counter. Mom. Catherine, Mom, the internet is off. Gerald can't watch his shows. Mom, Nathan just called us. His phone is shut off. He's stranded. He was supposed to meet Vanessa. Mom, answer me. This is an emergency. This was an emergency. Not my daughter's spine. A declined credit card. I let them stew for another 30 minutes while I helped Emma have a few sips of water. Finally, I pressed the call back button. My mother picked up on the first half ring, her voice a shriek. Catherine, what is going on? Good morning, Mom, I said. My voice was calm. It was my presenting to the board voice, cold, flat, and devoid of emotion. Don't you good morning me. Everything is broken. My card, the internet, Nathan's phone. What did you do? Gerald is furious. What card, Mom? I asked, inspecting a loose thread on the hospital blanket. The card, the emergency card. It was declined for groceries. I was humiliated. Ah, yes, I said. That card. I closed that account. The balance was getting a little high. There was a choked silence on the other end. You closed it without asking us. How could you? Gerald needs that. Nathan needs it for gas. He can buy his own gas, I said. And the internet. I have my shows. Gerald has his news. I stopped paying the bill, I said simply. You'll have to call the provider and set up a new account in your name with your own payment method. I don't know how to do that, she sputtered, her voice rising in panic. You've always done it. Yes, I said, I have. I could hear her breathing fast and shallow. I could hear my father shouting in the background. What is she saying? Tell her to fix it. Tell her I need to check my stocks. Catherine, this isn't funny, my mother cried. You have to turn it all back on right now. And Nathan, his phone is off. Vanessa is waiting for him. He's going to lose her. You know how important this connection is for him. The fury I had been holding back finally pricked at my composure. Important connection. Is that what he's calling it? And tell me, Mom, where was Nathan's important connection on Monday, when his niece was lying on an operating table for 15 hours? Silence, a thick, damning silence. Where were you? I pushed. Where was Dad? Where was the golden child who needed $7,000 for a party? We didn't want to be in the way, she stammered, the excuse so flimsy it was insulting. You know your father hates hospitals. He hates hospitals, I repeated, my voice dangerously low. So he couldn't sit in a waiting room for his only granddaughter. He couldn't send a text message. He couldn't call. But 3 days later, he found the strength to text me for $7,000. $7,000 for a party. For a 31-year-old man who has never worked a day in his life. While my 16-year-old daughter was learning to breathe again without her lung being crushed. You don't understand, Carol shrieked. This is his future. Vanessa is from a good family. This is his big chance. His future, I said, the words tasting like ash. I sent him a cent for his future. That's all it's worth to me. Now, listen to me and listen carefully because I am only going to say this once. The Bank of Catherine is closed permanently. The phone, the internet, the credit cards, the streaming services, the Amazon account. It's all gone. You are on your own. You can't do this, she screamed. We're your family. We'll be ruined, your father's health. The stress. You're abandoning us. Abandoning you? I laughed. The same cold, dry sound from 3 days ago. You want to talk about abandonment? Let's talk about me sitting in that beige chair for 15 hours alone. Let's talk about my daughter waking up from surgery and asking where her grandparents were. You weren't busy. You just didn't care. You didn't abandon me, Mother. That would imply you were ever there in the first place. You simply forgot I existed until you needed a check. Well, the checkbook is gone. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was, for the first time in my life, truly peaceful. I turned my phone to do not disturb, allowing calls only from Emma's doctors. The storm could rage all it wanted on the outside. In this room, there was only my daughter and her recovery. But I knew my family. I knew my mother's hysterics were just the opening salvo. The real assault would come from my father and then from Nathan. My father, Gerald, tried a different tactic. He sent a long, rambling email that evening. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. It started with guilt. Your mother is beside herself. She hasn't stopped crying, moved to indignation. I don't know what's gotten into you, Catherine, but this behavior is childish. And ended with a threat. You are part of this family and you have responsibilities. You can't just close accounts. You co-signed on this condo. You are legally entangled with us. He was right about the condo. That was a vulnerability, but he was wrong if he thought it was his leverage. It was mine. I replied simply, "You're right, Dad. I am on the mortgage. As such, I'll be contacting a real estate lawyer to discuss our options for forcing a sale of the property. Since I've been paying the mortgage and the bills for 6 years, my equity stake is substantial. You and Mom should probably start looking for a rental." The response was instantaneous. "You wouldn't dare." I didn't bother to reply. The real fallout, however, came from Nathan. After 2 days of silence, I assume it took him that long to find a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi. My email inbox was flooded. The subject lines were a journey in themselves. Phone isn't working. Vanessa is mad. Turn my card back on right now. Dad said you are selling the condo. Are you insane? The final email was a long, incoherent tirade. He called me jealous. He called me petty. He said I was trying to sabotage his happiness because I was old and miserable. He said Vanessa was the best thing that ever happened to him, and I was ruining it. He demanded I fix this and transfer the $7,000 plus an extra $1,000 for emotional distress. It was pathetic, but it was also dangerous. I knew Vanessa was the one writing these. The language, sabotage, emotional distress was hers. She was desperate. My brother was a puppet and she was pulling the strings so hard they were about to snap. They were panicking, and panicking people do stupid things. My suspicions were confirmed when I got a call from a polite-sounding man at my bank's fraud department. "Miss Catherine, we're calling about some unusual activity on your accounts. We blocked an attempt to add a new user to your primary checking account. The user's name was Vanessa." My blood ran cold. "That is absolutely not authorized." "That's what we thought," the agent said. The request came via a phone call. The person had your mother's name, Carol, and passed the initial security questions, your father's birthday, your childhood street address. But when we asked for the 2-step verification code sent to your phone, they couldn't provide it. My mother. She had actively tried to give Vanessa access to my personal checking account, not the family card, my salary, my savings, my daughter's college fund. The last bit of familial sentiment I held on to, the tiny lingering ember of she's just misguided, turned to ash. This wasn't enabling. This was conspiracy. They were actively trying to steal from me. I thanked the agent, added new layers of security to everything, and changed all my passwords again. Then I printed out the information I had on Vanessa, the $80,000 in debt, the civil judgments. I put it in a crisp manila envelope. I knew they weren't done. I knew they wouldn't just fade away. They would have to see in person that the well was dry. 4 days later, Emma was finally discharged. The relief of walking her through our own front door, of getting her settled in her own bed, was indescribable. I was fluffing her pillows when the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. I could feel it. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. There they were, not my parents, but Nathan and Vanessa, standing on my welcome mat. Nathan looked rumpled and furious. Vanessa, however, was perfectly composed, wearing a sharp white blazer, her expression one of polite, venomous concern. I opened the door. "Catherine, thank goodness," Nathan blustered, pushing past me into my foyer. Vanessa followed, her eyes doing that same old assessment of my home. "We've been calling you. Why haven't you been answering?" "I've been busy, Nathan. My daughter just got home from the hospital." Right. Yeah. "Hope she's okay," he said, waving a dismissive hand. "Listen, Kath, this has gone on long enough. Mom is a wreck. You need to fix this. You need to apologize to Vanessa." I turned my gaze to Vanessa, who was smiling at me. "Catherine," she said, her voice like smooth, cold silk, "I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. We're all family here. I know you've been under a lot of stress with Emma, but your parents are very distressed. What you've done is, frankly, very cruel. They're elderly. You can't just cut them off. Is that what you're here for?" I asked, crossing my arms. "To advocate for my parents?" "I'm here," she said, stepping forward, "because Nathan and I have a future and you are standing in the way of it. That $7,000 was a deposit, Catherine, a non-refundable deposit. Because of you, we lost it." "Oh no," I said, my voice dripping with false sympathy. "You lost the Bali deposit. That's a shame. So $7,000 gone just like that." "Yes," Nathan yelled. "And it's your fault. You owe us that money." "I owe you." I said nothing. "But since you brought up the $7,000, Vanessa, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the non-refundable deposit. Or should we talk about the civil judgment against you from Banner Associates for $6,800, or the $12,400 you owe Capital One? Because I'm a risk analyst, Vanessa. I check the fine print." The smile on Vanessa's face didn't falter, but her eyes went dead. Nathan just looked confused. What? What is she talking about, V?" "She's lying," Vanessa snapped, her composure cracking for just a second. "She's jealous, Nathan. She's trying to drive us apart." "Am I?" I walked to the hall table and picked up the manila envelope. I pulled out the printouts. "Here you go, Nathan. This is your fiancé. $82,000 in debt. 2 outstanding warrants for failure to appear in court for non-payment. The Bali deposit wasn't for a party. It was to pay off a creditor who's about to garnish her wages. Except she doesn't have any wages." Nathan's face went white. He took the papers from my hand, his own hands shaking as he read them. "Vanessa, is this true?" Vanessa's face contorted from polite concern to pure reptilian rage. "You had no right," she shrieked at me. "That is private information. I'll sue you." "Go ahead," I said calmly. "You'll have to find a lawyer who works pro bono. Get out of my house." "Nathan," she screamed, turning to him, "are you going to let her talk to me like that? She's trying to ruin us." Nathan was just staring at the papers, his world visibly collapsing. "You lied to me. You lied about the money." Vanessa spat, her mask completely gone. "Your whole family is broke, Nathan, just like yours. I thought your sister was smart, but she's just a bitter woman. I told you we should have just gone to the bank." And she stopped, realizing what she'd said. "Gone to the bank?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You mean like my mother did when she tried to give you access to my checking account?" That was the final blow. Nathan looked from me to her, his face a mask of horrified understanding. "Get out," he whispered. "What?" Vanessa snarled. "Get out," he roared, throwing the papers at her. "You lied to me. You tried to steal from my sister." "Steal." She laughed, a high, hysterical sound. "Your whole family has been stealing from her for 20 years. You're the biggest thief of all, Nathan. You're nothing without her. You're just a pathetic, unemployed child." She stormed out the door, slamming it so hard a picture fell off the wall. Nathan stood in my foyer, breathing heavily, tears of shame and rage in his eyes. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing before he finally just deflated. Kath, You should go, Nathan," I said, my voice flat. I was too tired for his apology. It meant nothing. He looked down at the floor, then turned and walked out the door, leaving it open behind him. I watched him shamble down the walkway. A 31-year-old man who had just lost everything he thought he had. I closed the door, locked the deadbolt, and leaned against it, closing my eyes. "Mom," Emma called weakly from her room. "Who was that? You were yelling." I walked to her room and sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair. "It was just your Uncle Nathan, sweetie," I said. "He won't be bothering us anymore." The downfall was not cinematic. It was a slow, quiet, administrative process, which felt appropriate. My father, Gerald, tried to call a lawyer who promptly informed him that forcing me to pay their bills when I was not legally obligated to was impossible. The lawyer also confirmed that as a co-signer on the mortgage, I had every right to force a sale of the property to recoup my equity. Faced with reality, they sold the condo. The market was good, but after the mortgage was paid, my equity was returned, and their small portion was taken. They were left with very little. They moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in a 55 Andover community an hour outside the city. My mother had to get a part-time job as a receptionist at a dental office. My father, for the first time in a decade, had to learn how to manage his own finances. Nathan vanished for a while. I heard from a cousin that Vanessa had, in fact, left the country. Nathan, cut off from me and with no one to lean on, ended up moving in with my parents. He got a job at a big box hardware store. I saw him once, months later, pushing a line of shopping carts in the rain. He looked up, saw me, and immediately turned away, his face red with shame. I felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, just nothing. My life, on the other hand, began to open up. The budget line items that had once been mom and dad condo, Nathan emergency, and family miscellaneous were now Emma college fund, travel, and savings. The emotional weight was even greater. The constant low-level anxiety of waiting for the next financial emergency was gone. I no longer dreaded the sound of my phone. Emma's recovery was long, but she was a fighter. 6 months after the surgery, she had a follow-up appointment. Her surgeon put her x-rays up on the light box. Her spine was straight and strong. "She's a textbook case, Catherine," he said, smiling. "She's cleared for all non-contact activities. She's going to be just fine." That night, Emma and I sat at the kitchen table and I opened my laptop. "So," I said, "that trip to Bali never happened for your uncle." Emma grimaced. "Gross. Good." "Well, I was thinking," I said, turning the laptop toward her. "I had the booking page for a flight to Italy open. You've worked so hard and you've always wanted to see Rome. I think we've earned a vacation, just us." Her eyes lit up. Truly lit up for the first time in a year. "Mom, are you serious?" "Completely serious," I said, pulling out my new credit card, the one with only my name on it. 2 months later, we were standing in the middle of the Colosseum. The sun was warm on our faces. Emma, who was now 2 inches taller than me, was laughing, taking a picture of a stray cat. She was strong, healthy, and happy. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a split second, that old reflex of dread tightened my chest. I pulled it out. It was a text from my friend at work sending a funny picture. I smiled and texted her back. I looked at my daughter, standing tall and straight against a backdrop of ancient history. And I felt a sense of peace settle over me that was so profound, it was almost overwhelming. The betrayal had been devastating, but the freedom that came after, the freedom of realizing my worth was not tied to what I could provide for others, was absolute. I had cut out the toxic parts of my life, and in their place, everything else had finally started to heal.